This is an RNZ podcast.
No mai, whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. It's great to have you with us for another episode of Country Life. Ko Sally Rounder ho.
G'day, I'm Duncan Smith. Today, we meet top-dressing pilot John Barge to find out about his nearly half a century in the air.
Later, Janina Schwanneker meets a fourth-generation orchardist to learn about his experience recovering from Cyclone Gabrielle 2 years ago this week.
But first, we're heading to Southland with Cosmo Kentish Barnes, where an ocean plant's making waves as a methane-busting feed supplement for cows.
My name is Brent Jackson. I'm the production scientist at CH4 Global down in Bluff. And down here we grow a red seaweed asparaginopsis for cattle. We feed this to cattle and it reduces the methane that they produce by up to 90%.
That's a huge reduction.
Yeah, and it only requires around 50 grams a day to have that kind of impact, which is almost like just sprinkling a bit of salt on your fish and chips. It's really almost nothing.
Now, we are in what used to be the old freezing works, I believe.
Yeah, one of the great things about this building or this site is that it's all being kind of repurposed. There's also a power farm, a whitebait farm, and there's a kelp facility as well. But we've been here for 2 years now, and it's great.
Yeah, so it's a perfect fit really for what you're doing.
Yeah, it is. And the seaweed that we grow is also native to this area. So initially we started growing out offshore, but there's a lot of problems with that, with the variability and the conditions, and you can have one unwanted contaminant come through and just wipe out your whole crop.
So now this is a land-based operation.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges with offshore, but with land-based farming, it's controlled conditions, easy to scale and consistent and reliable. So we grow the seaweed in its tetrasporophyte phase. It's got 3 stages of growth in its growth cycle, and this stage is in suspension, as you can see in the tanks here. It just makes it a lot easier to move around and grow and to really scale.
Yes. And before we find out more about the process, tell me about CH4 Global.
CH4 Global has been around for 4 or 5 years now, and it started when Steve Meller, the founder, apparently he was at a conference where they were talking about climate change and the impact that rising sea levels was having on the Pacific Islands, and he was collaborating with CSIRO and some other companies at the time and overheard the impact that asparaginopsis could have on cattle and the methane that they produce. And from there, it really just took off. And this facility here was sort of the first stage of proving that we could grow this on land at scale. The next stage is in Louth Bay over in South Australia, and that's the facility which opened up last week or the week before.
Gosh, this could be groundbreaking for dairy farmers keen to somehow reduce the amount of methane their cows are producing.
Yeah, we would really love to get into the market in New Zealand, but at the moment we're sort of restricted by legislation because asparaginopsis, or the bromoform in asparaginopsis, is classed as a veterinary medicine. So in order to use it here, we need to get it reclassified as a supplement for cattle feed.
And so until that happens, farmers won't be able to access this natural methane reducing product.
Yeah, unfortunately in New Zealand, that's the problem we're facing. We are working with government now, and hopefully we'll be able to overcome that hurdle in the future. But at the moment, everything we grow here gets exported to Australia.
So it's already gone to market over there?
Yes, we've already got a couple of companies over there, Sandalwoods, Ravensworth, and we've got a couple of other international companies, UPL, Lotte in Korea, and Mitsubishi are interested as well. So we are already selling products, and the farmers have been happy with the product, the cows have been happy with the product. The methane reduction's been between 80 and 90%, and the feed efficiency's also increased. And we've got so much demand, it's hard to keep up.
So basically it's a supplement, I guess, that, for example, cattle could eat while they're having other feed.
Yeah, you just mix it in with their feed. It's like 0.5% of their feed is the methane tamer, which is our final product, and that the cows don't even notice it's there. Not only does it reduce the methane they produce, but it also, in that methane inhibition process, reduces the amount of energy spent on methane production, which can then go into other aspects of the cattle growth, which means the cattle require less food, which is great for farmers. It means their cattle's feed efficiency goes up, they don't have to feed the cattle as much, and they get less methane. And with a lot of these supplements, it's hard to get it to the farmers if it's going to cost the farmer, but if we can do it in a way that benefits the farmer as well, they get a meat which they can sell as eco-friendly, which means they can also sell it for a little bit more, and then we don't need those government subsidies that so many other companies rely on.
Yes. Now, what's the noise we can hear in the background?
That's the aeration. That's how we keep the seaweed suspended.
And it's a huge open space. How many vessels have you got processing seaweed in front of us?
Down here we have 49, and total volume on site is about 230 metres cubed.
Yes,
water.
so a lot of seaweed there.
Yeah, we grow between 250 and 300 kilograms a week.
Okay, well, Brent, give us a quick rundown on the production process.
Yeah. So this here is an inoculum container. This is where it all starts. These vessels are the smallest vessels we have on site currently. Before this step, there is a collection which you go out into the ocean, collect some fresh seaweed, and there's two different ways of growing that seaweed out, either through sporulation or fragmentation. Here we haven't quite gotten to the sporulation, so we do everything through fragmentation, which is just breaking the pom-poms up and just letting it grow.
It's quite a sci-fi looking process. There are lots of flashing lights in there and rows of glass jars with small bits of red seaweed bouncing around in the water.
Yeah, all different shapes and sizes. So the scale here is between sort of 2 and once we get the newer vessels in here, 100 litres.
So these are the babies, so to speak.
Yeah, these are the babies. This is our cleanest culture on site. So we have to be very careful with biosecurity.
So what happens once they get to a certain age?
Well, they don't really age. The cells are immortal. They just keep doubling and growing and doubling and growing. And
so from these you can grow endless amounts of seaweed?
yeah, correct. So this here, we start with maybe like 1 or 2 grams, and that 1 or 2 grams will turn into 300 grams a week. It's really quite impressive. Go up here and show you the next.
Yep. We've just passed an area of what used to be the freezing works, which has yet to be developed, and it's still looking a bit run down.
Yeah, initially we were planning on using that space, but it was going to cost too much to do the roof.
Thank you. So we'll come up to the next level. Now up here you've got quite a few more containers.
Yeah, so from the inoculum container downstairs we'll move into these vessels here, and we go from sort of 100 litres to 1,000, and then from 1,000 to 1,500 over here, and then eventually we'll end up in the 3,000 litre vessels.
So it's a pretty straightforward growing process.
Yeah, it is. We do change the conditions at each stage to try and increase the bioactive content of the seaweed and keep it clean.
So how do you process the seaweed once it's grown enough into a product that can potentially be sold to farmers?
So once we harvested it, we freeze it and then we dry it. So in this room here, we've got the operators. They're putting the seaweed on trays, and then we'll put them into the blast freezers. Once it's been frozen, we'll then put it into a freeze dryer to dry it, and then that gets shipped over to Australia.
And the seaweed is a beautiful kind of purpley colour. It's quite fluffy. Is that what the animals eat?
In Australia, they'll do some more formulation where they'll add molasses, which gives it a little bit of flavour and it helps retain the bromoform. And they'll also blend and dilute it to get the bromoform concentration in the methane tamer that they want.
Yes.
So 50 grams a day, and the methane that the cattle produce is reduced by 90%.
So it works away in the gut of a ruminant animal.
Yeah, inside the gut you have bacteria which convert fatty acids into, or the byproducts from the fatty acids into methane, and this inhibits that process so that there's no methane produced, and the cow's gut can then focus on spending that energy elsewhere or converting that nutrients into beef.
The potential is huge for CH4 Global.
Yeah, well, it's pretty crazy. Like, methane is, over a 20-year period, 80 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. So, like, essentially for every kilo of methane you prevent from getting into atmosphere, it's like preventing 80 kilograms of CO2. It's crazy, like, how we've done nothing about it until now. And the great thing about this methane tamer that CH4 is producing is it's easy to use. It doesn't require any capital investment for the farmer. They can just mix it in with their feed, which is the great thing.
Yes. You'd think that the New Zealand government would jump at the opportunity to let farmers use this here.
Yeah, we do have a lot of people in government who are really interested in getting this moving and getting it into the market here. And one other thing which we need to work on is the dairy formulation. So at the moment it's targeted at feedlot cattle, but the feeding regime of dairy cattle is slightly different. So it'll just be maybe 1 or 2 doses a day sort of thing when they come into milk.
What have been the biggest challenges you faced along the way in terms of making this whole process happen?
Figuring out how to grow seaweed on land consistently and reliably. Because we're one of the first companies to do this. There's no handbook. There's a lot of learning along the way. Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges, but I think we've done really well to get where we are now.
Is this a world first?
As far as I'm aware, yeah. There are other companies working on growing Asparagopsis, but CH4 Global is the first company to grow it at the scale that we are, and to be supplying it to farmers already who are feeding it to their cattle, which and the beef from that cattle is going to market.
And how satisfying is it for you to be part of this methane reducing journey?
It's easy to forget how impactful this work can be. Like, obviously you just come to work, grow seaweed, but yeah, when you think about the climate and how impactful methane is as a greenhouse gas and how much methane is produced by cattle, like even if you just give it to a fraction of the 1.5 billion cattle in the world, it's just have a huge impact.
Production scientist Brent Jackson talking to Cosmo at CH4 Global's seaweed facility in Bluff. Now, to see some photos of the seaweed being grown and processed, go to the Country Life webpage.
Now let's take a look at what's been making headlines on the rural news desk this week. The owner of Tokoroa's Kinleith Mill has confirmed 230 jobs will go from its paper division, which will close at the end of June. OG Fibre Solutions Chief Executive John Ryder says there's no feasible alternative that would keep the Waikato plant operating. Workers and union representatives attended a meeting at the mill on Friday to learn their fate, with many expressing shock. The company plans to focus on pulp.
A Gisborne sawmill that ran for 30 years before it was shut down last March will reopen with new Australian owners. Malari Group Australia says it's entered into a sale and purchase agreement to buy the 25-hectare site, which includes the sawmill and manufacturing lines for laminated veneer lumber and plywood. The company will need up to 200 workers eventually.
Strong prices, increased production and a weak New Zealand dollar are seeing soaring returns for our primary exports. The ANZ Commodity Price Index rose 1.8% in January, taking year-on-year gains to almost 15%. The Meat and Wool Index climbed 3%, beef prices rose by nearly 2%, and lamb recovered most of the fall in December with a 2% lift. Forestry was the only sector which didn't see an increase as it fell on weak Chinese demand.
Public consultation has opened on what the government's calling the most significant reform of New Zealand's fisheries for decades. The Minister of Oceans and Fisheries, Shane Jones, says proposals include streamlining how catch limits are set and how to better deal with discarded fish. There's also a proposal to ban the sharing of the footage captured by fishing vessels in Official Information Act requests. Seafood New Zealand has welcomed the proposals, saying they could improve current outdated regulations that are holding back innovation and growth. The Green Party says the government should turn the tide on exploitative and extractive fishing practices like bottom trawling and champion sustainable fishing.
Chinese authorities have prosecuted 9 more people in relation to counterfeit Zespri kiwi fruit labels. They've been sentenced for their involvement in manufacturing and distributing more than 9 million labels in China. Zespri says the sentences will act as a powerful deterrent in China around the fraudulent use of intellectual property.
A New Zealand wasabi grower is encouraging more growers to give it a go. Ex-policeman Fenton Wood started growing wasabi in Canterbury as a hobby before turning it into a business. He says our climate is similar to Japan's, where the plant is grown in high mountain streams. Mr Wood says growers would need to invest in tiered beds with a good water supply and an excellent shade system.
A new trial on a Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc vineyard aims to give growers an alternative for tackling powdery mildew. The project involves the Bragato Research Institute and the firm A Lighter Touch, and it aims to see if UVC light can be used in place of traditional fungicides to kill bacteria. An automated machine will emit different frequencies of UVC light across different rows at night, a process which is said to be more environmentally friendly.
Te Kuiti sharer Jack Fagan has won the world's largest cash prize in sheep shearing for a quick shear in Australia. Fagan won the $22,000 for his 19.78 seconds quick shear against a number of Trans-Tasman competitors at the Oberon A&P show. Lightning.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
I'm taking you now to an aeroplane hangar in the middle of a paddock in the Lower North Island. It's where top-dressing pilot John Barge keeps his plane, used for spreading fertiliser onto nearby hill country farms. He invited me to climb up to take a look at the cockpit, so I did. John's just getting me a stepladder. I wanted to do it the pilot's way, stepping on the wing, but I'm not allowed to. Okay, I'm just climbing up with my microphone, so if you hear microphone noise, that's why. Oh, wow, it is a tiny little... Here he is. Here's John on the other side.
So this is a air tractor built in Texas. It's got a 750 horsepower motor in it. It carries 1.5 tonnes. It cruises along about 130 knots, which is about 250 kilometres per hour.
For listeners who don't know about top-dressing planes, they're quite different from your normal small fixed-wing aircraft, aren't they?
Yes. You can see it only has one seat for the pilot and another seat in the back there for the loader driver. It's got large wheels on it for a small aeroplane to handle landing on airstrips.
Because some of them must be pretty bumpy, are they?
There are one or two that are pretty rough, yeah. I've got a little Fergie tractor, and so some of the rough ones I asked the farmer if I can go and plough them up and level them up, and I've done that to 2 or 3 airstrips in the last 5 years. Yeah,
and you can be assured of a smooth landing or a smooth takeoff.
Yeah, for sure.
In the late 1940s, New Zealand was at the forefront of the aerial top-dressing industry. The planes were known as dung dusters, the tractors of the skies.
They were the carefree days. Planes took off and landed in any paddock they could get fertiliser trucks to. In 1949 they started loading by hand, but these pioneering days soon passed. Machines were developed to load the planes because farmers were crying out to have their farms dusted with superphosphate and lime. The hills and high country were carrying more stock, and grass was growing where it never had before. A new industry was booming. There were plenty of ex-Air Force types busting to have a go.
John Barge started his career in the late 1970s. And at 71, he thinks he's the oldest left in the business, at least among the very few owner-operators. With his wife Penny, John's been running Barge and Gardner Aviation from his 29-hectare farm at Kahutara for the past 35 years. And he's coming up to half a century in the air. We're looking out from your place over the valley. Do you top-dress some of those hills over there?
Every farm that you can see around here, I've top-dressed it.
Can you see any of the airstrips from here?
You can see 2 or 3.
Aerial agricultural work is notoriously dangerous, and New Zealand saw a spike in accidents at the end of last year. 2 years ago, Penny took on the role of safety manager for the business.
The house is essentially our office. I can see him taking off, landing. I mean, I even watch some of the airstrips from here with the binoculars, and I know a lot of them because I've been there. So, yeah, you know all the quirkiness and all the good points of things, all the bad points, yes.
John's one of only 4 or 5 one-person operators left in New Zealand, just one of many changes over his 49 years top dressing.
We've gone from looking out the window, eyeballing it, to GPS where it proves where you're going, it gives you guidance, it adds up the hectares as you go, so you know how many tonnes you've done, how many hectares you've done. If you've got the rate right, the hopper door will adjust for the different speeds of the aeroplane. Whereas in the old days when it was manual, we just set the hopper door up. Yeah, that's about, you'd guess, 250 kilos to the hectare, set it, and if you did a run up the farm and a run back and that worked out right, that's where you left it. We have a map, puts into the computer on the aeroplane, and again adjusts the hopper door to suit those variable rates. If it's a swamp, you don't want fertiliser in a swamp or a river or creek or whatever, and it'll shut off for those kind of things, yeah. And it's marked on the map as well,
I guess regulations have changed over the years too, haven't they?
Around the environment it has. It's made it in some ways, well, I wouldn't say it's more difficult, but you've got to be more careful, I guess. Even in the old days when it was manually operated, if the pilot, again, was conscientious, you'd shut off for the swamps and the waterways and all that sort of thing.
Has the type of fertiliser changed over the years?
Mostly for hill country, we just use superphosphate. When I first started top dressing, it was superphosphate or lime. Now we have nitrogen, which the hill country farmers don't tend to use too much. Nitrogen-based fertiliser, DAP, Crop Master, they're extremely expensive.
And has the frequency changed over the years? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of farmers requiring your services?
When I first started, the industry was quite subsidised. Like the farmers had a subsidy to buy the fertiliser, they had a subsidy to help for the cartage, and a subsidy to pay for the spreading, and they used to get SMPs, supplementary minimum price for their sheep, their wool and their lambs, and the cash flow for a farmer wasn't such a problem then. And so we used to just go flat out all year round. It was just hard out going for it. Then in the mid-80s we had Rogernomics, who removed all the subsidies, and we had a massive downturn then.
Yeah, how did you manage to keep going in those days?
We were in deep trouble financially. I had to get a job. We went 13 months without drawing money out of our wages, out of our business. I had to work on other jobs. Penny got a job working in the garage, pouring petrol and in the grocery shop. And then I used to do anything from relief milking cows, tractor driving, truck driving, pruning pine trees, working in the back of wool sheds, penning up, docking, anything that I could do. And the farmers were really quite good in supporting me in that way. Yeah.
And then things turned around?
Yeah, and then it slowly turned around.
Recent tough times, though, have meant a repeat of those years.
We're going through the same kind of thing that we did in the 80s. The farmers just haven't got the money. They tell me that they want to put fertiliser on, but they've got no money to do it. Prices are lifting just at the moment, and interest rates are dropping down, which will be all helping the farmers, but other costs are going up as well. They're still struggling, and we struggle along with them. I had one farmer say to me years ago in the 80s, "You want to try making a living being a farmer?" And I said to him, "Yeah, you want to try making a living out of what farmers have got left over." It's not much, I can tell you that. Our income in the last 12 months has dropped 65%. Our loader driver, we had to put him off. We couldn't keep him on full time. And we are pensioners, so we're living mostly on the pension.
How's it looking for the coming season? You're just about to enter that busy period, aren't you?
I think it'll be better than last year. Well, I'm hoping it will be, but it won't be great.
Have you got bookings already? Or
We've got 2 or 3 bookings, but you really can't tell until you're on the airstrip doing the job. Like, they ring up and say, yeah, we're going to do it, probably in a couple of weeks, and then you don't hear from them, and then there's, oh, no, we're not going to do it, we've changed their mind. Or
yeah, how much does it cost, an average hill country farmer to have their land fertilised aerially?
It's extremely expensive these days, probably $140 a hectare. A couple of years ago, it's probably $100 a hectare. The farmers will say to you, fertiliser are expensive, but it costs you more not put it on. They also say farming without fertiliser is like trying to drive your car without putting petrol in it. They just haven't got the money.
There is a movement, though, isn't there, around what they call regenerative farming and having no inputs, just letting nature take its course and having a longer sward on the grass.
Yeah, I think that could work.
Is that affecting your business?
No. The ones there who think like that have always thought like that. The real hard part for us is the forestry. The forestry's taken over in the last 5 years, probably 6 or 7 farms.
So John's pretty much seen it all.
And this one here opens the lid.
We're back in the hangar, leaning into that small cockpit where John spent many, many hours.
Before we just used this is a manual lever. We used to just, about there, and push and pull on that lever all day.
You don't use that lever anymore?
No, we just have a switch there. You can hear it, hopper door opening and closing. It's better. I have to say it's better.
What, do you prefer the old one?
Well, the old one was simpler.
John's recently notched up a milestone, 30,000 hours flying.
Since I was just a little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I wanted to be a top-dressing pilot.
Where'd you get that desire from?
My father was always keen on aviation, and he didn't do it, so I got encouraged from him. I guess it's challenging to fly a plane. It's freedom.
You have the passion to fly. You've always
Yeah. 10 years ago, if I hadn't been flying for about a week, people would say, oh, John's got withdrawal symptoms. You'd think, oh, tomorrow's going to be a good day and I've got all this work lined up, and I get so excited that I could hardly sleep at night.
What about the challenges and the danger? And I guess, Penny, you'll have something to say about this.
I know that John's a very good pilot. He's a very safe pilot, but you always have that thing in the back of your mind. But I've never dwelled on it. So, he will do what he needs to do, and he is safe. He doesn't take risks. And that's why he's here today, really. Yeah.
Have you had any near misses, John?
Oh, well, I've had some of those. I don't like to talk about that too much. But I've had some quite near misses which you think, I nearly wore at that time. It's the after, and your knees shake a bit, and your heart races a bit. Well, it happens that quick. You don't have time to really get hardly frightened. It's disappointing. You've got no aeroplane, no income coming in, and you still got to pay your insurance, you still got to pay your repayments, you still got to pay yourself.
Enough to make you want to give up?
Just about, I suppose. Some people probably would, but never thought about giving it up.
Aerial top-dressing pilot John Barge. You also heard from his wife, Penny Barge. John also flies vintage planes and trains pilots for the Sports and Vintage Aviation Society. And that archive sound you heard was with thanks to Archives New Zealand.
Hi, I'm Mark Anderson and I'm a dairy farmer down here in the south. We have adopted regenerative principles on our land, and you are listening to Country Life on RNZ National.
Producer Janina Schwanneker is in what's known as the country's fruit bowl, where many farmers and growers are still recovering from the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle.
In 2023, Cyclone Gabrielle struck off the east coast and Hawke's Bay,
devastating both regions and killing 11 people. From above the air in a company helicopter, fourth-generation orchardist Cameron Taylor quickly began to understand the scale of the devastation as he helped rescue those trapped on surrounding rooftops. The cyclone left behind millions of tons of silt and debris. 2 years on, the region has made a remarkable recovery. Cameron takes us through the Taylor Corporation packhouse in Waiheke.
Wow. So here you can see the mud line there. When I first walked in, it was over my gumboot, so just under the knee. So it took us 3 months just removing mud, basically.
You wouldn't think it looking at it today, would you?
No, it's back to normal. We've just kept a couple of signs of the cyclone.
Some reminders?
Yeah, and it's more to be proud that we've got going. You know, what we've achieved, no one actually believed that we could get it going within a year, the packhouse.
The clean-up effort was huge. From the packhouse alone, they removed over 20 million litres of silt left behind by floodwaters. A brown line at knee height serves as a reminder of how high the mud was. There was still the family home and orchards to clean up, and a lengthy insurance claims process.
It took us about 3 months. We had these big vacuum trucks. We were waiting. They were at the power stations clearing the mud out. Straight away they did that. We managed to get them coming here, and I think they were just, I forget now, but I'm sure it's like a good 3 months. We took 22 million litres of mud out of it. So basically we made a big pond out the back of the shed, and we had 2 big excavators, and we just pumped the mud into that, and then the excavators pulled the mud to the side to dry it, so then we could truck it. We dumped it at a couple of council
the sites they set up.
Yeah, and we set up our own. Because it was so slow, you had to wait in line. We got permission, got consent to do our own one because we lost so many, we hundreds of hectares of our own too, so we're never going to clear it in time. The biggest thing is you're in shock, and it's a family business, and your parents are in their 70s. It's a big decision, even fighting insurance and getting all that going and claiming.
The 30,000 square metre packhouse was just 2 years old when the cyclone hit, and filled with the latest and most high-tech gear. Deciding to try and salvage what remained was a huge decision for the Taylor family, especially knowing what the financial burden would be for future generations.
We're knowing what we lost is going to be generations to get that back. It's not my kids, it's not my debt now, it's probably going to be your grandkids' debt or the great-grand. You know, it hit us at the worst stage. When the fruit's on the tree, you have no insurance. If it's in a bin, you've got full insurance. We had, a few hundred bins picked out of 30, 40,000 bins. It just wiped you out. Yeah, and you spent all the money getting it to harvest, basically.
Was there ever kind of a question of, do we build back here?
I think the main thing was, can we get the packhouse? That's the heart of the company. For us, our reputation is that we're at a scale where we're not so big, we can't compete with the real big guys with the big supermarket where they can supply them longer, but we're more niche marketing. I use Asia as a local market, but that means you have to have a packhouse for top quality. Those bigger sheds are, they add value, but not as much value as us slightly smaller guys can do. The sad thing is this was the state-of-the-art shed where it had the most advanced shed in the world. Yeah, there's bigger sheds with technology, but we had robotic forklifts. It was only 2 years old. That was actually a good thing because we'd built it, everything was brand new, we had all the designs, so that's where it was like for like. Here, this is a reorder, exactly what we had. We're talking about the decision to keep going too. In the packhouse, we'd updated with the automation, but later on this morning we'll go and see the orchard. For about 8 years we've been developing automation in the orchard with blue sky stuff of robotics in the orchard. We've even had trials with robotic tractors and all that. So that was a big decision. We've already cut our labour units in half with robotic pruning and all that. So it was exciting. Before the cyclone, we were excited what we had achieved. So that was the big boost that year. We can actually dig us out of this hole.
The government has provided millions of dollars in funding support to help growers recover, including for the removal of silt. Even still, the cost for growers has been huge, and Cameron feels lucky they had the scale necessary to come back.
We knew to do that we would have to have the bank's hand on our shoulder as well as the government's hand on our other shoulder, to give us that help. That kept us up at night because also we have a workforce in the season of over 300 staff. New Zealand locals, 190 families we feed, so that keeps you up at night. That was a big thing too.
People who might also have lost their homes and you want to support by giving them work, giving them...
Oh, exactly, but in the shed we got it going under a year, and there's 2 of them who lost their homes at the same time, so they had the stress, but they were still working 7 days a week for us. So, their poor partners, it was pretty crazy times.
What was the cost of the damage here at this part of the site? Obviously, there's also the orchards, which we'll see later, but...
Oh, well, in here it's over 20 million, and we're still in well over... Yeah, it's going to be a 30 million plus claim for insurance, and then you're looking that on top for non-insurable. So...
Big figures.
Yeah, we're the biggest claim ever for FMG. Yeah, it's nothing to be. You don't want to be there. And I think it was so big. The speed of the money coming out of them that was the real frustrating. It was all on receipts and trying to get it done. We're buying things. It has to be loaded on a ship, and we haven't got the money. Well, they're not going to load it on the ship till we've got money because we've lost all our money. To keep our payroll. You're talking when you have 300 staff. You imagine your payroll every week. It's money just disappears real quick.
Cameron's proud to say they had the packhouse back up and running within a year of the cyclone. The packhouse is the pride and joy of the operation. It's a hum of activity come harvest time, when they can process more than 50,000 bins of apples, both for Taylor Corporation and other orchards.
We've got a season under our belt, and it went really well. Everything you see here is new. The porters there, they were only in for 1 year. Even though a lot of it was out of the water, we had 30-degree days straight after the cyclone with, half a metre of mud still in here. The humidity, it was like raining inside. So all the electrics, it just corroded basically, and no one, that's the frustrating. You think these are good, they look fine, but inside the corrosion. So the companies who supplied them, they just cancelled their licences straight away because they're not going to guarantee it. So what you see just went to scrap metal, which is all these robots just went onto big trucks to the scrap metal yard. It was just, it was crazy.
The high tech now once again driving the packhouse is testament to New Zealand leading the charge of fruit automation and the future of the horticulture sector. Cameron talks us through some of the futuristic-looking equipment: automated conveyors, graders and washers.
I mean, as you're looking around and you walk down here too, it's something to be proud of. Is this is all designed in New Zealand. I used to be able to put my hand on my heart, say everything was made in New Zealand. Some of the companies now, Compact got taken over, bought by Tomra. So it's a New Zealand company, but it's been bought outside and now they've moved it offshore. But it is still, the design companies are in New Zealand, so we're world leaders with fruit automation and robots. And as you can see with these laboratories here, rapid packers, they're made in Tauranga. These robots here, it's gone through all defect sorting with the cameras. Every apple has had well over 500 photos taken of it, multiple times, defect sorted, and then it gets placed in with the robotic suction cups and put in there. So by the time it gets to the end user, it's only the end buyer and the picker that's touched the fruit.
Outside the packhouse, you can see the impacts of the cyclone on the surrounding orchard block where Cameron's family also live. Where the silt has been cleared, there's now bare dirt, young trees poking through their protective coverings. They've had over a quarter of the trees die and are still replanting. Last year they replanted about 22 hectares, and this year they hope to do about 40.
So here is, it's the house block here. This was all damaged, the trees all died. They were older trees, but now we've got all the latest planting techniques. And as I said before, what gave us hope to keep going was in the 8 years of developing the orchard into automation, we've managed to get the height down so there's no 90% of the fruit is picked off the ground. We're not using ladders. Everyone says, and we were the same, was, the land is so expensive and air is free, you've got all the space, but it's not free, you've got a
side.
labour side,
Yeah.
and then we are one of the last industries that we can actually use a ladder without another person holding it. So how long is that going to last? So, you can't have platforms. You imagine we're harvesting these fruit. If you've got, 600 hectares, it's just not economical to have that many platforms for a few months of the year. The money's not in it. So that's where we've learnt to grow. We're keeping it lower, the posts are smaller, the wires, but this will be all these are just massive walls, which are probably 400 wide of fruit.
What was the ground like, this time, February last year?
It varies here. So this one block, we probably only had a 300 mil of silt over this. We have the river block, as you would imagine, where the stop banks burst, and we had over 1 metre of silt and shingle. Well, as you can see, these posts here, it was actually higher because we could only see the tops of the posts. So it's actually close to 2 metres in some area of shingle. And that area there alone, it cost us the price of the land. I think it was 170,000 a hectare and stuff just to clear the silt. You wondered, you walk away, well, it will be nothing, It's just shingle and silt. So we've had to spend that just to get it back to an orchard.
How do you recondition the soil? How do you get it good for growing again?
Well, we just removed all the silt and all the shingle, and that one block, the river block, there was a lot of gravel on that through the river, not just the silt. We just cleared it, and it's fine. It wasn't too bad. There was different types of silt. On the Naurua was a very sandy one, and on Tutai was a real clayey, muddy one. We've learned a lot. So it was roughly for us around 70,000 a hectare average to clear the silt. We actually stopped in the end because we were going to just go broke just clearing the silt. It was just, we've got to remember too, some of it is long-term lease land, like 25, 30-year leases, so it's not even our land.
Is it worth the investment then?
Yeah, so you're negotiating with the landlord, who are older couples. They're in the 80s, 90s, some of them, they don't have the money too. You can't. So to keep going, so we've managed just like, we'll get this orchard back going if you extend it, give us another 25 years basically to hope. But yeah, there are the decisions. No one knew. All the scientists said the trees are going to die, and yes, we've got a lot of tree death. They didn't. Where we cleared the silt, we've still got death. When we run out of money and we've left it, nature, what we learnt is as it dried, you got those big cracking and it around the trees, and it cracked, so enough oxygen got back into the soil, and we have not all the trees died. We lost 27%, which is a huge amount of loss, and it's going to be years to plant up.
The industry faces a long road to recovery, but there are green shoots showing and new opportunities, such as new varieties and smarter orchard layouts. Cameron takes us through a new block where this is evident.
That's the big thing too, is the new varieties. This is what you hear here is a king variety. It was actually from my own breeding program that my dad bred. So this is crossed between a Fuji and a Royal Gala. And it's doing amazing in Taiwan, China and Vietnam. We can't grow enough of this variety. So that's the exciting part. And we've got some pre-var varieties that we joined another family business in Nelson, and we've got a company, Next Generation, with Golden Bay Fruit. The two of us are joined, and we've got 2 pre-var varieties from the New Zealand breeding program. It's exciting, the future of that. So all these are all the new plantings. So yeah, it's exciting times in that sort of sense. Where we have to, with our labour units or labour so high, we can't compete against Chile. So the Royal Galas and those standard varieties are gone now. It's too expensive to grow. So we have to have these newer varieties. This block here is all the new varieties. There is a little bit of Galaxy, Royal Gala, but most of them are all pre-var varieties or from our own breeding program. So Sassy, Posh, King, We're in a sassy block now, and what else is there? New Zealand Queen. So as we're standing in this block here, the rows are 1.3 kilometres long. It's all designed for automation. These, as you see, these trees, they're 6 years old, and we've hand pruned them once. It's all done by machinery, pruning wise, and now we are learning with the Darwin thinning, so we're using machine even thinning. That was a big decision. We know what we're doing. We had confidence. It was with the cyclone, to keep going, and that's what we said to the government. Just believe in us. If we have a little bit of help from you guys with cheaper loans and stuff like that, we can keep going.
It's Cameron's love of the industry and family connection to the land which has kept him going these last 2 years. On difficult days, he's grateful to have a great team backing him, which has made the stress of restoring the packhouse all worthwhile.
To be in this industry, you have to see the positives. I see we're in a lot of pain yet. I mean, it's going to hurt. Like I joke with our CFO, she just no spending, because there is going to be no spending. It's only for the next 6-7 years. It's only what you have to. If you don't, it's
maintenance, rather.
Exactly.
Are you feeling hopeful?
Yeah, I'm positive. I see it. Yeah, it's real hard times now, but as you can see, we've got there. The cyclone has kicked us way back. Like these were designed with robotic tractors in there, and we were in the trial, so we actually had robotic pluses tractors going up and down these rows. What it's done is the cyclone has taken all your money, so those are now years away, which is sad. We've built this, we designed it, but that's life. And that's where I think New Zealand public has to know is the horticulture, what we earn, we spend. So it's not just, so we're buying those were built in Tauranga. That's not going to be, they've got to find other markets now overseas. It's just reality is the money's not there to spend on that stuff at the moment. The cyclone has knocked the industry back 6 years to really, and that's with the support of the government. If we didn't have that support from the government with cheap loans that not all of us got, it sounds weird that I'm saying I was one of the lucky ones, but I was lucky because I was completely wiped out. The ones that only got 70% wiped out didn't cater for it. If you were 69% wiped out, you didn't get a cheaper loan. So it's weird that I'm saying I'm lucky because I lost everything. But yeah, so it's going to be hard times for the next 6-7 years really because of capital. We've got to attract money outside, overseas money or something like that, to go. I do see the light at the end of the tunnel. I do see a future exporting. It's not, it's the people. In our horticultural industry, you have a large team, which is an expense, but it's a good team. You're all passionate, so you come to work with a good team and you're still working the land. That's where I see horticulture different to the farming, and that's what I love about it. We're working the land, we're in sunny days, we're out there with cool teams, we're not by ourselves. You get your hands dirty.
Cameron Taylor of Taylor Corporation speaking to Janina Schwanecker in Hawke's Bay. 2 years on, they're busy with their second apple harvest since Cyclone Gabrielle decimated much of their orchard in the region. Cameron says it's been an amazing harvest, certainly the best in recent years, and something that was much needed for growers. Now, just a correction to last week's story about the composting barn, which we incorrectly stated was under the Tararua Ranges, when in fact it was under the Ruahine Ranges. Sorry about that. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for joining us. Now, we love getting your feedback and ideas for future stories, so do get in touch. Our email address is country@rnz.co.nz. Links to photos and stories related to this episode can be found in the show notes or by heading to rnz.co.nz/Country Life.
You can follow and listen to Country Life wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this one, we'd love you to give us a plug on social media or tell a friend about the show. Just click the share button in the app, to send it to a friend.
The stories today were produced and presented by Cosmo Kentish-Barnes, Sally Round and Janina Schwaneker. And in the studio production team today, we had David Knowles and Mark Chesterman.
From me, Sally Round. Catch you next time.
Ka kite.